Welcome into another great episode of the Dynasty Brews podcast. We are right now live on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook, and we are back. Well, I'm back. Justin was here the other day. So Double J and Justin are here, and today we are joined by our crew from the Fantasy Face-Off, FF Face-Off, I'm sorry, Ryan Miner and Adam Segal. How you guys doing today?
Great.
Good, man. How are you?
Good, good. I should have done that a little bit better. I should have just asked, hey, Ryan, how you doing today, man?
Oh, yeah. Long time no see, right?
Yeah, I know, right? We weren't just on an auction podcast. But, yeah, I want to say thank you for coming on. Two guys that know the NFC North well, one being a Lions fan, one being a Packers fan, so you guys can see it from two different sides of the board. But, yeah, I mean, it's this you okay over there?
Oh, I'm doing good. I'm just kind of choking on my puke because we're doing the NFC North today.
Well,
that's good or bad for us.
Oh no, we'll find out shortly.
Yeah. We can't wait for your takes on the NFC North. But anyways, guys, before we get into this, I want to give a special shout out to one of our sponsors. They have been really cool with us, and we want to kind of share the wealth. So, as of right now, Dynasty Brews is sponsored with SeatGeek. That's right. All your entertainment needs, concerts, sporting events, whatever is going on in your local area, go on SeatGeek right now. Sign up and use the promo code Dynasty Brews for $20 off your first purchase. I mean, guys, it's summertime. We want to all go out. We want to enjoy a concert. You know, we want to go to a baseball game maybe, you know, and football's right around the corner too. So go on to SeatGeek right now. Save $20 with our promo code. We are here for you. We got you with this $20 promo, Dynasty Brews. All right, let's get started, guys. So from our entrances, we know that Ryan is a Lions fan. Adam is a Packers fan. First off, I want to go through – you guys had two different off seasons. You know, the Lions had this like uplifting off season where they're like, oh man, we finally got our wide receiver. You know, we're loaded on the draft. Our line is coming together. Maybe they're just waiting for next year for Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, that draft class. And then the Packers on the other side. You lost Devontae Adams. You really only re-signed a bunch of people. I mean, how, Adam, you've been dominating this division for a long time. How are you going into the season feeling, man? Like, is that Aaron Rodgers love to a new level, or are you kind of saying, man, that selfish son of a bitch, he should have fucking given Devontae a little bit of his money?
You know, I'm actually pretty optimistic about this season. They've revamped the defense. I think the Packers probably have easily in the top 10 defense. I'm super excited to see their new draft picks, Devonta Wyatt and Quay Walker, which was a surprise pick for me. I did not expect the Packers to pick Walker in the first round, but super excited for what they can do. And yeah, it sucks losing Adams. I mean, it was heartbreak. You know, arguably one of, if not the best receiver in the NFL. I think it's going to be hard for Rodgers to, you know, if I'm being honest, I think it's going to be hard for him to, you know, maintain that top 5 status if we're speaking strictly for fantasy. But you know, it's interesting. If you look at his stats without Adams, he's actually done really well. But you know, he's older, he's getting up there in age. But yeah, I think it's going to be hard for him to replicate the season he had last year for sure, offensively.
Yeah, how are you? Here's a question for you. A lot of people are up and down about it. How are you feeling about Christian Watson going into this year? I mean, I haven't followed him much in camp. And, you know, little things I've been hearing is that he's been kind of dropping some passes here and there. You know, obviously, second-round pick. Some people thought he could have been a back-end first-round pick. It's a lot of capital to invest in a guy, and you're giving him, you know, this option of having 167-plus targets. Obviously, it's not going to go straight to him, but obviously you need to fill that void somehow. and he's going to be some way figured into the plan. So how are you looking at, kind of this receiver room with Lazard, finally signing his tender, and Watson getting into camp and maybe having a couple of drop issues right now?
Well, Jamar Chase had drop issues last year, and so obviously Watson's going to be the next Jamar Chase. I mean, it's a given, just a given. So
the ball is different.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's been said before. I think Aaron Jones is going to be a huge target monster for this team. He's going to be huge in PPR for your fantasy drafts. But I think we need to still remember they still have Amari Rodgers, they still have Randall Cobb. Sammy Watkins is there. Lazard is pretty much a glorified tight end. I think we're going to see Rodgers spread the ball around more this season than we have ever in the past. He loves to utilize his tight ends. I'm not expecting a huge season out of Watson. Everyone's been saying that, Lazard, he's going to be the number one receiver. He's, you can book him for 1,000 yards and, 7 or 8 touchdowns. Even when Adams was out, he's never eclipsed more than I think like 550 yards in a single season. So I don't know. I just don't see it for Lazard. I don't think he's going to be 1,000-yard receiver this year. I'm just being realistic. I think we're just going to see Rodgers spread the ball around more. And I think they're going to lean heavily on the run game and dumping off to Jones and AJ Dillon out of the backfield a ton.
Yeah. What about Robert? What about Mr. Tunyon?
Well, he's coming. Yeah, I mean, he's coming off an ACL injury, so I don't think he's even going to be. I don't think he's even going to be around to start. The first couple of weeks of the season. It's possible. I mean, if he goes on the PUP, he's going to be out for 6 weeks or something. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but they still have Josiah DeGuara, Mercedes Lewis at tight end. But like I said, I think we're just going to see Rodgers spread the ball around. I don't think we're going to see him slinging it 40 times a game. We may not even see him throwing it 35 times a game. He might get down in, the upper 20s, low 30s.
Yeah, I think that it may be time to retire Mercedes Lewis to the garage and just kind of remember the good old days with him. But anyways, guys, before we get started on this journey that we're going to do for the next hour, I want to say cheers to you guys. Thank you for coming on. If you got something to drink, hold it up. And so I made a slideshow for everybody, and we're kind of just going to go over the entire team, kind of see where you guys are feeling about these players, mostly the fantasy players. And yeah, just kind of, go through the list. So I got Detroit started off for Ryan. We got DJ Chark, Deshaun Elliott, Jared Davis being their main offseason non-draft additions. I had subtractions of Trey Flowers and Jalen Reeves-Maybin. Then we have on the draft side, they got Aiden Hutchinson, Jamison Williams, Kirby Joseph, James Mitchell, tight end, Malcolm Rodriguez, James Houston, and Chase Lucas. You're looking at it from here, there's a lot of potential with this team. I mean, I look at Aiden Hutchinson. They finally have somebody to click in with that defense, somebody who's kind of got that, real knee biter attitude, somebody who's going to be in the face of an offensive lineman 24/7's got that motor. Really kind of a guy who I look at, maybe if he doesn't get enough sacks, he'll still get pressures and he'll still rush the quarterback, which is going to be essential when you're dealing with Kirk Cousins, when you're dealing with Aaron Rodgers, and when you're dealing with Justin Fields. Jamison Williams obviously is a guy who might end up on the PUP himself. He's looking at maybe 6 to 8 weeks being out. Obviously the Lions have said the game plan is not to rush him. I mean, we're not really rushing for anything. So hopefully he comes back to full health. He says that he's a different type of player. You look at the tape, he kind of does feel like a different type of player. So maybe that brings it to, maybe Jared Goff can take his game up a little bit, or maybe, like I said before, maybe they're playing it out for the long game and they're trying to get their quarterback of the future next year. I liked Kirby Joseph coming out. He's a good safety. I think he'll probably end up being a backup for right now, but he's definitely somebody that's a good play in the future. And then Mitchell's the last guy I wanted to touch on, just because Hawk, I believe, is entering the 5th year of his contract. So obviously there's some wiggle room if Hawk doesn't really perform there. What are you guys looking at? And I'll pass this to Justin first. Ryan, I'll save you for last since you're the Detroit Lions guy. Justin, what are you thinking about this Detroit offseason? And where do you like place in all these players? Like, are you thinking DeAndre Swift is going to be an RB1? Do you think Goff is a value? Just give me your kind of overall feel about Detroit Lion players in fantasy.
I mean, in Superflex, I do think that Goff is somewhat of a value. I'm not, he's obviously going to be your QB2. In terms of points per game, he averaged 14 points per game. So he finished right in that, lower end of the scale. So he does fit that QB2 mold. And, he's being drafted at, probably after, I think, the 13th round. So he's kind of a value in startups. He's an easy trade target. He'll probably get you about 14 points a game. So I like that. I love Swift. I think Swift has the potential with his receptions, if he can stay healthy, to finish at the top end again. It's all going to come down to health for him. So it's kind of a bummer. I thought they were going to land Deebo Samuel when that trade was happening. I think we exchanged some tweets on Twitter before the draft. There was some real interest there. So I really thought that Deebo made a lot of sense for the Lions. So overall, I think this offense is kind of a value. It's not like Seattle where you're trying to avoid them completely. They're kind of under the radar, got a really good tight end in Hawk. They got their rookie receiver, and then they got DJ Shark, who that's the one guy I'm going to avoid, I would say. But, I like what they did in the draft. I like Jamison Williams. I like DeAndre Swift. I like Hawkinson. Kind of all feels like a value, and I think we're just kind of holding Goff to the Jeff Fisher standard instead of kind of where he's finished the last couple of years.
That's fair enough. I mean, Jared Goff kind of did tease us for a little bit, making us think that he could actually throw 30 touchdowns and have a good year outside of a, Super Bowl contending system. So, but I mean, I still think he's got the opportunity there. I mean, and now they're surrounding him with some weapons. I think you're spot on. If he's a QB2 and a super flex, he's nobody you want to build your team around as far as being a QB1 or a single QB. You don't want to wait that long to get your QB is what I'm saying. But Adam, I know I don't know if it's an arch rival, maybe like one of those root for rival teams. How do you feel about the offseason for the Lions, and how do you feel about the outlook for them this year?
I really love what the Lions did this offseason. I was actually hoping that the Packers were going to draft Jamison Williams. Even with his injury, I think he was probably the best receiver in the draft. And especially with the loss of Marquez Valdez-Scantling, the Packers really need someone who can kind of fill that down the field stretching void. And yeah, just sort of bouncing off what Justin was saying, I love Goff in Superflex as your Superflex option. I don't have my AAV sheet in front of me, but I think Goff in our auctions has been going for $1, maybe $2 at the very most. And if he can give you in fantasy in a Superflex league, if he can give you 15, 16 points a game, I'll take that every day for $1 in my auction league. Love Swift, love him. Like Justin, I think he's got unlimited potential in PPR. Ryan did make a good point in our auction show, though. You typically like to have running backs that are tied to offenses that are going to score a lot of touchdowns, and that's kind of my only concern with the Lions. I do wonder how many times they're going to be in the red zone, inside the 5. But I do think that Swift offers great value in PPR. He's definitely a first-round talent in snakes.
Would you feel better? I know Herrera's answer to this. Would you feel better if they traded for Jimmy Garoppolo to end training camp?
Me?
Would you take Garoppolo or would you take Jared Goff as the starting? Would you feel any better with one or the other if they took over this offense?
No, I don't think so, to be honest. I think I'm perfectly fine with Goff as the quarterback for the Lions and from a fantasy perspective. That's an interesting idea. I mean, who knows if they'll go that route?
Yeah. Cap probably makes it impossible, but you never know what they'll do with Jimmy G.
Yeah.
Yeah. At this point, I think that Jimmy G is most likely going to get released, even though it's kind of hard to say that because I know Seattle's ready to take him and try and put them in their system and be like, hey, tell us all your secrets about the 49ers.
The reason why I think Jimmy Garoppolo makes a lot of sense there, though, is that this team has a lot of talent. And if Goff can't get it done, they're going to want a veteran in there backing up Jared Goff, I would believe, unless they think they're going to get, the first overall pick. I mean, Ryan's the fan, so he'll probably steer me straight on what he's thinking. But I just think that this offense has so many pieces that I would not feel comfortable going into the season without a veteran behind him without Goff.
Whoa. Tim Boyle is a veteran. David
TB12.
Blau is a veteran. Oh my! No, I understand what you're saying. I just had to pull your leg on that one. But I mean, I feel like you're getting Jimmy G, you're getting Jared Goff, you're getting the same guy. I mean,
I still think Jimmy G can actually play. This is where we differ.
All right. Well, Ryan, you can break the tie. Who do you think can play, Jimmy G or Jared Goff?
Jared Goff for sure. He's already implemented in the offensive system. He knows what to do. Jimmy G, it's like, you have to rebuild that chemistry on the fly now. Like, if they were to trade for him or, sign him as he gets released, you have 2 months to try to get him up to speed with everyone that's already up to speed with Jared Goff. So I don't see a true reasoning to trade for him, because it's not like he might be an upgrade, but what is he, going from QB 18 to QB 17? It's not that much of an upgrade in my mind, with going from Jared Goff to Jimmy G. Jimmy G needs to go to somewhere more like Carolina, Seattle, if he gets released, or like if something happens on one of these teams, possibly he could actually even go to Cleveland for all we know. That's how bad that whole situation is going on with Baker Mayfield and all that.
I just think if you have options, though, like no one wants to go to Carolina. Like if I asked my 5-year-old if he wants to go play quarterback for Carolina, he might be like, I'm going to go play in the sandbox over here.
But I mean, like the way like Dan Campbell has his team going, the chemistry going with it, it flows very well with Jared Goff there. And that's how I think it's looking good. And like another player, like during the draft editions, like they also took Josh Pascal in the second round. He's also defensive end. So he can actually go on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson and be more of a compliment to him now too. So like the additions that they did in the draft and additions on the offseason aren't building for win now. It's building for win, like it's building to win next year and the year beyond that. Like they're trying to get that team built to get that to the next level, and not trying to say, let's go all in right now and do this. They're building pieces that they actually need, taking the pieces that will fit in their offense and defense and putting them on the field. And like other off-season additions, which a lot of people don't hear, but I hear a lot here, is they keep adding defensive linemen. So it's like whatever they can do to basically blitz Aaron Rodgers is what they're going to try to do.
Now, here's why I felt like there needs to be a presence. I mean, I was looking it up. In the 6 seasons that Jared Goff has played, he's only played in 16 or more in 2 of them. So injury they're not long injuries, but when you're in a playoff race, especially in this division, I mean, do you think that they would bring in a competent backup outside of Tim Boyle, or do you think they're comfortable with Tim Boyle there?
I think, it's not really that they're comfortable with Tim Boyle. I don't think they're comfortable with Tim Boyle. He's not the answer. I think they're more comfortable with David Blau, and Tim Boyle is more of the QB3 there.
Okay.
I think they're grooming Jared Goff to be the backup. So I think they're doing right there.
And I agree with you on that one, Justin, because what they can do, they technically have Goff under contract through 2024. So they can even draft one of these next quarterbacks next year. Who, as of right now, they're saying there's 5 of them that could possibly go in the first round. The Detroit Lions have 2 first-round picks, so they could even trade up to try to get one of those better quarterbacks if they want. If it's C.J. Stroud, if it's Bryce Young, if it's Richardson. They have a plethora of draft picks to kind of move up to do it. Kind of like what they did with Jameson Williams. Like, if you look at that pick right there tells you they're not win now. They're looking at next year and beyond.
Yeah, and like you said, like not only with the pick, but like they've come out and said like we're okay with him sitting out, because it's like at this point, like Adam was saying, I fully agree. I think he was the best overall wide receiver as far as talent goes. I think that he's an above average talent. I think that he might be borderline Tyreek Hill type speed. So when you get somebody who's like a real weapon like that, and you put him on a team that really needs that, of course they're willing to kind of like compensate for it. You know, they're gonna sit him out. They're not gonna strain him. They're not gonna, you know, give him an opportunity to mess up his ACL again. And I mean, here's the thing. I think the Lions could actually compete without him right now. You know, they have a good coaching staff there. They have competent players there. DeAndre Swift can, like you guys were saying, can absolutely open up and be like a storm that hits the NFL with his ability as a pass catcher and as a rusher. So, you know, it's one of those things where the Lions, they're probably going to end up, like I said, 7-10, but it's going to be a really strong, really progressive 7-10 where people are getting the feeling like there's going to be kind of a changing of the tide. And that's why I named this episode is Aaron Rodgers still the king of the North? Because it starts to feel like there's a changing of the tide, and I'm here for it. I'm here.
I like it.
I think that by the time Rodgers retires, there will be like a Bills type team to rise, but we'll get to that next. Yeah.
He's saying Tom Brady had to get out of the AFC East before the Bills could be the man. All right, well, let's move on to our next team, and we're gonna do the Bears. Oh man, the Bears. Oh man. Anybody want to volunteer to start off with this one? I'll run down the additions real quick. Byron Pringle, Equinami of St. Brown. They did a phenomenal job.
Packer legend.
Oh man, he went down in the record books for the Packers too, man. Holy shnikes. As draft additions, we got Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker, some good secondary pieces. Velus Jones Jr., somebody who's kind of taken off right now in the fantasy world. A lot of people are like very like polarizing about this guy. They're either like, oh yeah, he has number 2 written all over him, and then other people are like, but it's number 2 in the Bears offense. Do we really want any of that? Then you got Braxton Jones, Dominique Robinson, Zach Thomas, Tristan Ebner, who's another guy who's kind of maybe, I don't know, he might be a sneaky play with Montgomery leaving. And I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think Herbert could actually have a future there. And then we got Doug Kramer, Jatiri Carter, Elijah Hicks, Trenton Gill. I'm going to let Adam start off with this one. Tell me what you're thinking about fantasy values with these Bears, man. Tell me how high you are on Justin Fields.
I mean, I think as a super flex quarterback, he's got huge potential just with his rushing ability. But that being said, I'm not sure that I can rank him, you know, in my like top 10. I don't know if I see it yet with him. You know, he's only played, you know, what is it, a handful of games, you know, a handful of NFL games. You know, Darnell Mooney's great talent. He was another guy I really wanted the Packers to draft. I'm super high on him for fantasy, and I'm also really high on Cole Kmet this year. Auctions, he's basically free at the end of drafts. I'm all over him. And like you said, with Khalil Herbert, with Montgomery, this is probably his last year in Chicago. He's another like late round draft target. I'm all over. If Montgomery goes down with an injury, Herbert's got, you know, RB1 ability. You know, he showed that last year. But the Bear, I'm not going out of my way, so to speak, to, you know, really draft Fields. But if he fell to me in a snake, or if he was super cheap in auctions, I would take him as a super flex for sure.
So here, I'll direct another question to you, and it can go to the whole board. Where do you feel comfortable getting him? Like if he, like you said, if he fell to you, where does he have to fall to you to where you're like, okay, Justin Fields is a value now?
In auctions, probably under $15.
Yeah.
Okay. How about say like just a regular dynasty league?
A snake draft?
Yeah.
Man, I haven't been doing too many snake draft mocks. I don't know where he's going right now in drafts.
I can look that up right now.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of one, right? So you can keep talking and I'll let you know.
I mean, like I said, I like him as a super flex option in auctions. Again, if he's under $15, I'm all over that. I think just with his rushing ability, I mean, I think someone like Jalen Hurts is much more talented with his rushing ability, but he's got the potential. Absolutely, and he's going to be scrambling, I think, for his life this year. So,
yeah, and here's the thing: I think you hit the nail right on the head. Jalen Hurts is a much better and a much more natural scrambler. The unfortunate part is Justin Fields is so much faster than him. It's like you would think like if this guy kind of took like a master class and just like sat down and learned, when to go and when not to, you would think, oh man, this guy could absolutely have a Lamar Jackson type of season as far as a rusher, right? Because he's a blazer. I think he ran something outrageous. It was like a 4.26, right? No, it wasn't.
He ran really fast.
He ran really fast. I think it was like a 4.4. I think I went too far with that one. But still, for a quarterback, that's awesome. Jalen Hurts is more of like kind of a not Lamar Jackson, a Josh Allen type of runner, where he's really big. He's a physical type of runner, but he knows when to go. And it's funny that you mentioned that because that was one of my criticisms of him coming out is that he doesn't know when to actually take his lane. He doesn't know when to give up on the play. He doesn't know when to just use his talents to get on to the next first down and keep the play and keep the drive going. Ryan, how are you feeling about this Bears offense? And since you're in a snake draft right now, what did you find out? What did you find out about his ADP right now? And do you think he's a value there? And if not, where would you value him at?
So like in a two, we're doing a super flex.
Yeah, let's do super
12-teamer. So he went in the 4th round as QB 14. And like looking at these additions, like I can't even keep a straight face by looking at these offseason additions and subtractions and draft additions because it's like a lot of players that like I'm like, who? It's like you're not building around Justin Fields this year. Like, he wanted Velus Jones, and like Velus Jones is a 25-year-old wide receiver who was also he was a 6th-year player that also went to USC, transferred to Tennessee, was known as a punt returner and kick returner, and just dominated there. And that's what I saw him more as was like a 4th, 5th, 6th round type pick for a special teamer. And then, but he goes in the 3rd round, so now that's why he's getting boosted up because everyone's saying, "Who's this Velus Jones guys?" And you look at his tape, and he's just a speedster. But could that be more of the age? Going up, being a 25-year-old going up against 19, 20, 21-year-old kids. And another thing too, like to look at, like if you're like looking at the Bears, this team is like trying to build. It looks like they're trying to build something. They're trying to figure out their identity now. So next year they have $93 million worth of cap space available. They're like one of the top teams going into next year. So maybe they try to figure out what this team's trying to identify itself at, and then attack it next year in free agency. You're possibly losing David Montgomery, but what can you sign on the market? I mean, you could have Juju Smith-Schuster coming to town, a whole bunch of other wide receivers who signed 1-year deals that are just 1 year this year. So this team could be 1 year away from actually being something that's we're all going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I passed on Justin Fields last year when I should have took him. Could he be the next coming of a quarterback who we thought was never going to be something, but actually does become something?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that take. And one thing I really agree with you is that they didn't do shit this year to make Justin Fields feel comfortable. Like they didn't really do much on their offensive line. They didn't bring a lot of weapons. They kind of just said, hey, you got Mooney, you got Montgomery. We'll mix Herbert in there a little bit. And everybody's waiting on this Cole Kmet breakout. I'm telling you what, man. Yeah, sure. He might break out, but I mean, anything's better than 0 touchdowns. So, I mean, he can only go up from here. As far as the $93 million cap, that's the one thing I wanted to hit on. If we learned anything from Jacksonville this year, you have to make it appealing or else you're going to overpay for players. When you have to pay Christian Kirk $20 million to come to town, you might be doing free agency wrong.
That's a bargain.
Oh yeah, right now it is.
Nowadays. When you got to pay Devontae Adams 30, yeah, I guess you're right. That's a bargain. But that's kind of my point is that when they have draft capital to go out and get like some good talent and to build around this offense, and they totally just floundered it to go and try and do good on defense, but at the same time you're appealing to players to come and play for you. And if Justin Fields is I mean, if he doesn't even want to play for them by year 3, who's going to want to come and play with, whoever the quarterback is then? So I'm going to pass this to Justin. Tell me how you're feeling about this one. And I want to add real quick on this. Justin Fields is going 16 in ECR. Going around him is Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Tua, and Deshaun Watson.
Now you're talking about Dynasty. He's going where?
That's an ECR, Fantasy Pros ECR right now.
Gotcha. I feel like I see him going a lot in the second round in Superflex startups, so that's about right. Here's the deal. I was trying to compare his season. I'm on the record. I'm not a big Justin Fields fan. So he finished the season 42nd on a points per game basis. Not great. So then I was like, all right, is there any success stories around that range? People are paying the price, a second round pick, hoping he becomes Lamar Jackson. In 2018, Lamar Jackson averaged 9.8 points a game. Following season, he led the league at 27.7. But Lamar Jackson in no way was going in the second round, when those seasons were starting. So I just feel like you could be the biggest Justin Fields fan, but there's no way you can justify spending a second round pick on the guy in a startup draft. There's just no way you can justify that to me. Jared Goff also was 7.6 in 2016. He rose up to 17 points per game the following year. And Mitchell, you generally have seen progression when rolling through these stats, but the only one that rose above 16 or above 17 points per game was really Lamar Jackson, historically speaking. And so the best you're looking at is like QB 13 to QB 15, but you're still paying a second round startup pick, so it's just not worth the investment to me.
Yeah, and I got a quick question for you, Ryan. Since you're in your draft right now, where did Trey Lance and Zach Wilson go?
Zach Wilson went after. Okay. He was essentially the next pick. Yeah, he was. He was the next pick after Justin Fields. Zach Wilson. It went Zach Wilson, Derek Carr, and Tua. So it's almost basically like the same way the ECR rankings are in a way,
Right.
Kind of flip flop. But yeah, like the upside you can see in Justin Fields was that one game he had against San Francisco. When you actually got to see him run the ball, what you could see, like what he did at Ohio State, you saw that in that game. So you're hoping that's your hope this year when you're drafting him, is that he's going to get you that 100-yard game. Dave Montgomery is going to be the 1-2 option for him. It was like if we're going to run the option play, if you're not there, I'm taking off running. That's what you're hoping for, is more of a ground and pound game, especially with Justin Fields, and not much passing, because that's where he destroys you at, is on that run game.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I want to pose this question to the field here. Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, how do you have them ranked for Dynasty going forward? Let's start out with you, Adam, first.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I'm not much of a Dynasty guy myself, but give me Zach Wilson above either any of those guys in regular redraft.
Okay, awesome. Who would you? Here's one for you. Auction wise, who would you be willing to pay the most for?
That's a good question. I think probably, to be honest, I think I'm still going to go Wilson.
Yeah, I like that.
And he's a huge value right now. Huge value. I think I'd rather have him as my super flex than Fields. I think I'd rather have him than Derek Carr. I think he's got huge potential this year. Massive breakout.
Immense upside. Yep. I agree with you.
He actually real quick, he actually had more rushing yards than you would think. I know he had like one big game where he ran for something like 100 yards or whatnot, but he actually had more rushing yards. And I apologize, I don't have the list in front of me, but he had more rushing yards than a couple of guys. I think he even had more rushing yards than like Russell Wilson for the year, which was surprising.
Yeah, he was very underrated coming out of college. I actually noted that on my film notes last year, and I kind of said everyone at the time was kind of hyping up Justin Fields because of his 40 time, and I've been on record. I was like, dude, Zach Wilson's not Justin Fields, but he's sneaky athletic. Like he will get you probably a couple 100 yards every season, which adds up to maybe you go from QB 15 up to QB 10 because of that. Like it does make a difference.
Yeah. And I like the comparison of Russell Wilson to Zach Wilson, because that's kind of more Zach Wilson's game. He's more of an elusive, get outside the pocket, try and make something happen, and last minute, if I have to, run the ball, rather than just be a straight up runner. Where I think, you know, Justin Fields has the potential to be a straight up like Lamar-esque runner. But I'll pass this to you, Justin. I think I already know the answer with you.
So what were the three quarterbacks?
Yeah, it was, who do you value more in Dynasty right now? Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, or Justin Fields? And I just want to throw this out here. ECR has Zach Wilson at 23, Justin Fields at 16, and Trey Lance right now at 13.
Okay. So if we're, you know, I found this interesting when I was looking at it. So you look at Trey Lance, you look at Zach Wilson, and then you said Justin Fields. So out of the three last season, and, you know, we already know my answer. I'm going to go Zach Wilson. I've been the biggest supporter of him since he was drafted in a while. But in terms of that, Zach Wilson finished a whole point better than them last season in terms of points per game. So it's not even a question. And I think you saw down the stretch in those final 4 games, Zach Wilson had a top 3 finish. I think he finished QB1 one week, if I'm not mistaken, but I'd have to double check that. But he has the most upside, and his team also has given us all the signals that they want to build the team around. They tried trading for Tyreek Hill. They've drafted Breece Hall. They added Garrett Wilson. They have Corey Davis. I mean, they have given us all the signals in the world that this is our guy. We believe in him. He's the future of the franchise. You look at the Bears, you know, you can argue what the Bears are trying to do, but they haven't given me that vibe that Justin Fields is the unquestioned guy going forward. And then Trey Lance, he has the upside. I think the Jimmy G thing at this point might be kind of a smokescreen because they want to get someone traded for him. They're hoping for an injury at training camp. But in terms of the vibes I'm getting is I think the team has the most interest in Zach Wilson out of all 3 of those. And he's got, if not the best opportunity, the second best opportunity when you look at San Francisco. So,
yeah, I like that. How about you, Ryan?
I went Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, and then Justin Fields, just in that exact order. Because the same thing, you know, the way that Wilson has all the weapons around him, or just like Justin said, like, you know, they're trying to build the offense around it. They're trying to prove that it's a guy. With Trey Lance, I never liked him. You know, it's just like they took him number 3. And then watching him play, like, his game tape, it's like, okay, this guy's got the rushing upside. He's got this arm, but he's flat-footed when he's in the backfield, you know, looking for a pass. He can't read a defense. And every ball's like
150 miles an hour.
Yeah, and it's just like, but when he throws it, like, you can almost direct where he's going to throw it to. The defense were able to pick, like, when he played the Cardinals, you were able to pick him off. They were able to read him because he just kind of led with his eyes too much. And then, you know, with Justin Fields, like we've already said, there's what's around him. There's nothing really there to kind of help him get to that next level right now.
Out of those 3, who would you guys say, if we're sitting we're sitting here next year, who would we say is like, which of those three teams drafted someone to compete with whatever those 3? Is any of them you would consider on the hot seat? Because I would consider the way the Bears have constructed their team to make him pretty much on the hot seat. I mean, if he does terrible, they're going to have a high enough draft pick to get competition there.
I think Lance is on the hot seat.
Yeah.
Interesting. They don't have a first-round pick, though, is my only thing. They don't have next year's first.
Also, he's never had really a chance to compete.
That's why I think he's also on the hot seat, because you have all this investment on him and you haven't played him. So, like, you know, is holding him, you know, you spent the 3rd overall pick on him. Is holding him that additional year a bad thing or a good thing? We don't know yet.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Real quick, before we move on to the Vikings, I just pulled up the AAV for all 3 quarterbacks. So in a Superflex league, in a 12-team league, Lance is $20. Fields is almost 18. Wilson is 5.
5, yeah.
5.
Give me 5.
I'm telling you, Herrera killed me the other night because he took him in like the 2nd round, and I'm like, dude, I'm getting him like, you can get him in the 6th. Yeah. I mean, people legitimately think he's a jet. He's terrible. Mm-hmm. So like,
yeah, give me that $5 bargain any day of the week.
Well, I went into an in-depth like article about him and a team breakdown, and that's why I've like completely like fallen. Like, I'm like, all right, I'm all in on Zach Wilson, because I looked at some of his stats and I was just like, this guy's got the offense to fucking make this shit happen right now. I'm also Trey Lance guy. So
and this guy told me that I had an influence on him. Now he's pulling up other stuff. I feel lied to.
Well, it's a mixture. It's a mixture.
Yeah,
I had to see it for myself too. But yeah, I mean, I think that if anybody's on the hot seat, it's definitely Fields. But at this point, I feel like that whole Bears organization's seat is like a freaking, a freaking Dutch oven, man. Like that thing is on fire. Like somebody's gotta make it as a quarterback there. So maybe it's Fields, maybe it's another rookie. But anyways, let's talk about a team that doesn't have quarterback problems because they have signed their quarterback to a 2-year contract. That is Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings. This year they did a pretty good job. They went out, they got a more offensive-minded coach in Kevin O'Connell. They got Zadarius Smith, and they got Harrison Phillips to kind of help out that run defense. Major subtractions, I have Tyler Conklin, Mason Cole, the center, and Xavier Woods, who played a little bit of safety and a little bit of corner. You have Lewis Sine, Andrew Booth kind of filling that safety corner position. You got Vidarian Lowe, Ed Ingram, Brian Asamoah, Caleb Evans. I'm not going to try. Ty Chandler, Jalen Naylor, and Nick Muse. So, guys, this is a team that looks exactly the same offensively and fantasy-wise than it did a year ago. Who do you think is going to step up? I want to start off this time with Justin. Tell me about your Alexander Madison dreams.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of cooling on him. I do like him a lot. I think he's a value later in drafts, but I feel like we're kind of bastardizing his price. It's been kind of going up and up, it feels like to me. He's more expensive today.
You started something.
I don't know what it is, but he seems more expensive today than when he was in February. So I've kind of cooled on him. I think that he does have a chance to break out, especially if Dalvin Cook's moving around at receiver in the slot and stuff. I think you are going to see more Madison this season. So if you can get him, around the 15th round, I think that's a value, and he's definitely worth the option because Dalvin Cook struggles to stay healthy. In terms of the Vikings as a whole, I don't know what to think. I don't have a lot of statistics to go off of for Kevin O'Connell. I haven't really seen a Sean McVay coaching tree and what that looks like. So they're kind of my biggest wild card this season. They could completely dud for you, or they could completely flourish, and Kevin O'Connell could be the second coming of Sean McVay and be the whiz kid in Minnesota. So I think if there is a value, I mean, they're not a value, but there's a guy that I'm going to trust the most, it's going to be Justin Jefferson. He's locked and loaded. I still think he's going to get his targets, and he's going to be a reliable wide receiver one for the foreseeable future, no matter what happens in that organization. It's the biggest risk is really Dalvin Cook to me.
So I think one of the most interesting storylines that have come out of this offseason is with Kevin O'Connell and Mike McDaniel signing. Both teams' fan base have already been like, oh, Mike McDaniel, that means that Tyreek Hill is the next Deebo Samuel. And then with Kevin O'Connell, everybody's like, oh, that means Justin Jefferson is the next Cooper Kupp. Like, they're immediately going straight up like, all right, we got the next guy here. We got the next, big time wide receiver breakout. Justin Jefferson's already been a breakout. He's already done his thing. But like I said, I thought it was the funniest shit that people like immediately like started losing their shit over like just the coaching change. Like, we haven't seen anything happen yet. Technically, yeah. Robert Saleh came from San Francisco. He was a defensive coordinator, but he brought Mike LaFleur. And I mean, to be honest with you, I saw a resemblance, but I didn't see any breakout players come from that Jets offense in that first season with Mike LaFleur's offense.
No. It's a dangerous game to try and do the transitive property to these coaches.
Yeah.
The one guy that I predicted to have a breakout, years ago was really Mark Ingram in the Ravens. And it wasn't because he was on a coaching tree. It's because historically Greg Roman had never had a rushing offense finish outside the top three. So like you were like, okay, who's the starter? Is it Ingram? Like with Kevin O'Connell, you have no idea. And the transitive property is like unreliable. It's just like in college football, like, the best team will beat someone one week and then the next week they'll lose to like a mediocre team. Like, it's just, you have no idea what to expect with this coaching staff.
Yeah, 100%. And, you hit the nail on the head with the whole Dalvin Cook moving around thing. Like, what are they really planning with that offense? And, I guess we won't know until it actually fits, but it's funny to hear people go all in on something just because of the transition of a coach. Adam, how are you feeling about this Vikings offense?
I think that we're going to actually see the Vikings probably towards one of the league leaders in pass attempts per game this season. I think that O'Connell coming over from the Rams, I think he's going to want to try and prove himself, and I think they're just going to, I think they're going to have a whole new style of play. They're just going to air it out a ton this season. I think Jefferson has the potential to finish as the wide receiver one on the year in PPR. And I don't think that's a hot take at all. I think he really could finish as the wide receiver one this year. I think there's an argument to be made that Dalvin Cook could be the 101 in fantasy drafts and PPR. I mean, I think you can make that argument. And as far as values go, I think, looking at auctions, Kirk Cousins' AAV right now is 15. And another huge value on that team that I haven't heard too much talk about it, but another one is Irv Smith Jr. His AAV is not even $2 for a late round tight end towards the latter half. I mean, if you're punting on tight end in an auction draft, Irv Smith Jr. for $1.50, take that and run with it. I'll take that any day of the week.
I actually have a question since you're looking up AAVs.
Yeah.
Adam Thielen.
Oh my God.
Oh, good
I was
question.
hoping that was going to make it to me because I was like, that's one person no one's talking about.
Yeah, I think let me pull it up here right now. I think if I'm not mistaken, he's like $8, like super cheap. But let me go through and check the next page. And Madison, we were talking about him the other day or the other couple of minutes ago. He's only $1. I know that for certain. So you can get him. Let's see, Thielen.
Does that tend to be like a standard? Because I'm just getting into auction leagues. Does that tend to be a standard for most like backup running backs? Is that they're tend to be in that single digit range? I mean, maybe like a Kareem Hunt has like $10 to his name, but like say somebody like
him Hunt and Tony Pollard seem to be the most expensive backups in auctions. Thielen right now, his AAV is $9.
That's a steal.
Yeah.
Steal.
I mean, he's going to be, I think, 33 when the season starts. So, he could be coming towards that cliff. But if you could get him for $9 in an auction, what he did last year, that's a great value.
Yeah, 24 touchdowns in the past 2 years. He's been on an impressive climb. But like you said, 33.
I know I don't want to bogart Ryan's time here, but you said that you think the Vikings will finish, top of the league in attempts. Do you think Cousins can handle that kind of pressure? Because he tends to kind of flounder when the load gets to be on his shoulders, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question. I think their offense is going to be much more pass oriented this year. I think they're really going to just try to air it out as much as they can. I think they're still going to run a lot with Cook, and they do have a great offensive line. But it wouldn't surprise me at all to see them be one of the league leaders in pass attempts per game.
So, unbiased opinion, do you think that the Vikings have a very solid shot of taking the North?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, with the Packers, I think we're definitely going to see a little bit of offensive regression. I absolutely think it's possible.
Okay, all right. Got a Green Bay Packers fan to admit that the Vikings might win. No, I'm just kidding. Ryan, give us your take on this offense.
Adam Thielen. When no one's talking about him, and just like Adam said, he's going as a value in auction, and they're like doing all these dynasty drafts, he's fallen. It's like you guys are like everyone's all about T. Higgins right now. He's the number 2 to chase, but look what Thielen's been doing with Jefferson as the one. He's been a solid, backhand wide receiver one himself over the last 12 weeks before he got injured last season. And he's also was a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 the year before. So who says he can't do it again? That's what I don't like. Like that's an ultimate value. Like I like to try to get every draft I'm going into. Like he's on my list of players I circle. Like one of those get your guys type of list, and he's one that I'm always aiming to get.
Yeah, my biggest concern with him is the 10 touchdowns. You saw his, last season had his second lowest output in terms of total yards. So my reservations come as, can he repeat that 10 touchdowns? And, was the dip in yardage for a certain reason. I mean, his, the first couple seasons, the first like 5 or 6 seasons, played 16 games, all 16 games. Then the last 3 he's played 10, 15, and 13. So I have reservations about his health, and if last season was kind of a mirage with the touchdowns is my concern.
Well, but as where he's going right now too, he's like a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. So it's not like you're really like spending too much value on him at either.
Yeah.
He's actually almost like a bench piece for you.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. Well, I think that, he's done it twice now. He's done back-to-back years of double-digit touchdowns. And I think really what people have been, what the Vikings have been doing is they've been using Justin Jefferson and having him get double covered in the red zone. And then on the other side, you have a legit guy who's been a wide receiver 1 in his career ready to catch a touchdown. I would be interested to see what his red zone attempts have been, like his red zone targets have been from year to year, because I have a feeling these past couple years have gone up significantly.
Yeah. And if Thielen happens to get injured or goes down, KJ Osborne, huge value in drafts. Like he could be one that could really, really come alive for you if Thielen goes down. He's pretty talented. I like him.
Yeah, and I like Irv Smith. I like the Irv Smith take because, like you said, like $2, that is so goddamn cheap for a guy who is ridiculously athletic and was figured in to be a big part of the offense last year.
You know what's interesting, though, before we move on, just one quick stat that I'm fascinated by as I look through it. I have like a spreadsheet with all the historical stats. He only has 2 seasons above 10.2 fantasy points per game, which is actually super interesting to me.
Who's that, Thielen or?
Thielen, yeah, in a PPR league.
Okay. That is interesting. He just started to get going with the touchdowns. Before he was just an all yardage and reception guy. So let's finish this out with Adam's favorite team, Green Bay Packers. That's right, Adam. I'll save you for last. I'll let the fire start to stoke itself. We have DeAndre Campbell. Like I said, it was a big year of re-signings, right? DeAndre Campbell's back. Preston Smith's back. They lost to Darius Smith, so it was kind of crucial to get your middle linebacker Preston Smith back. Robert Tonyan, Big Bob Tunion's back. They lost MVS. They lost Billy Turner, guard. Drafted Quay Walker, brought in Devontae Wyatt as well, 2 Georgia guys. Christian Watson comes in. Romeo Dubes is a guy I'm like actually looking forward to like seeing play because I think he can be a game changer a year or 2 down the line. But guys, first off, let's start with Ryan. Walk me through your division rivals roster here. What do you think the Packers can do with 2-time MVP, 2-time defending MVP Aaron Rodgers behind the helm and kind of a younger offense, a younger, inexperienced offense?
I think they're going to have a nice 1-2 punch with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon going. I think they're almost kind of trying to shift this offense because you don't know how many more years of true elite Aaron Rodgers you have. And you kind of look at like Christian Watson, he's very good at run blocking. He can catch the ball, but North Dakota State, he was known for his run blocking stats. That's what he was really good at. And then Romeo Doubs, he's very raw, but he's very fast. So it's almost like that junior MVS type look player that they're trying to get out of him. Mm. And then with Allen Lazard, it's like Adam said, it's more he's not going to be that 1,000-yard receiver. So I kind of see more of a balanced approach where it's going to be everyone's going to kind of get their share of passes, but I don't think anyone's really going to break. Maybe 800 yards might not be broken by anyone outside of possibly Aaron Jones. I could see that guy, him getting 80, 90 receptions alone, because he could be lining up in the slot, line up as flanker almost in a way, and just kind of do dump offs real quick with A.J. Dillon on the field too. It could be that type of 1-2 punch. You never know who's going to be getting the ball.
That would be very interesting. I mean, we're going into, I think, the 3rd year of his new contract. And, it's all shaping up right now that he could have what Najee Harris had last year, be an effective runner and be an effective pass catcher and really tear up the fantasy zone. Like you were saying, if he gets 80 touches just through, pass catching alone, you're like, holy shit, that's a game winner. That's a league winner. And I don't know how much snake draft you've been doing, but I've been seeing him slip to 6th, 7th rounds where you're like, wait, you guys know that this guy is almost like the lone wolf in his offense at this point. I mean, obviously you have AJ Dillon there too, so it's definitely interesting to see where this offense ends up going. I think you're right. I think there is going to be a lot of Aaron Jones. I think there's going to be a lot of AJ Dillon. And you make a good point. You know, Christian Watson being a heavy run blocking wide receiver is going to fit in there too. Justin, how do you look at this Packers offense?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ideas that I have when I'm kind of looking at this team. So I'm with you. I think Aaron Jones is my dark horse to finish as RB1 before he goes off into the abyss of his career. You're going to have a bunch of receptions, no true number one receiver here. So I think we're almost all on the same page there. Probably some people think it's a hot take he can finish as RB1, but I think he's set up for the possibility to have that happen. And then I think I'll trade him if that happens, for what I can. But couple things. I mean, I do think Aaron Rodgers, he's averaged over 20.5 points each of the last 3 seasons. Still a huge value, especially where you can get him. I know he keeps talking about retirement. One thing that no one talks about in terms of like dynasty is, I know people are ready to write off Jordan Love. I know you don't like Jordan Love, but Aaron Rodgers had a couple seasons ago where he hurt his collarbone and he was out a lot of games. We're one injury away of seeing Jordan Love take the reins here. I don't know what that looks like, but there is upside to this offense if Jordan Love takes it in terms of the rushing offense. So I know he's not a huge runner, but I think he could actually, I think you could do some sneaky play action bootlegs and stuff like that. I think he's way more mobile than probably Aaron Rodgers is. So I think he's a value in later rounds of the draft, but I'm still comfortable taking Rodgers in the 5th or 6th round where he's going. And I think this offense is going to just keep churning out, big seasons and then kind of flounder in the playoffs, unfortunately.
It's fair enough. And you say you don't know what Jordan Love looks like on the field. Yeah, we kind of do. It was not very. It was not a very pretty sight.
You had one game where I don't think that Jordan Love plays the same type of ball as Aaron Rodgers. So you give Jordan Love an off season to implement an offense, I think it'd probably be a lot better than what we saw.
Ryan remembers week 18 because the Lions picked him off twice.
Yeah. It's our Super Bowl.
Yeah. Anyways, Adam, finish us up, man. Tell us who you like on this Packers offense.
Well, I got to point out the picture you chose for Rodgers. He looks so sad. He looks so depressed. Sad they don't get a wide receiver in the first round. No, I mean, I think we've said it. I mean, I think Aaron Jones is going to be the number one wide receiver on this team. They're going to be using Jones and Dillon in the backfield together a ton. They're going to move Jones out wide. They're going to move Dillon out wide. And I think we're just going to see a ton of dump off passes. They're going to be running a ton this year. Short little passes to Jones and Dillon. I love the defense. I think their defensive line is going to be much improved. I loved the Devontae Wyatt pick in the draft, even though he's a little bit older. I think with him and Kenny Clark, they're going to have one of the most dominant defensive lines in the league. And I'm super excited to see Romeo Doubs and Watson. I think they're, with Matt LaFleur, you got to be able to block as a wide receiver, and Watson does that really well. I don't think he's going to, set the world on fire. I don't think he's going to be like a rookie of the year, candidate or contender. I'd be surprised if I don't even think he's going to get, 700 yards receiving this year. I really don't. I think they're just going to use him primarily as a blocker and just jet sweeps and whatnot. But, like you said, I don't think the Vikings, like we were saying before, I don't think they're going to dethrone the Packers as the top dog in the North, but I think they're a lot closer than people think. And, coming from a Packers fan, I just got to be realistic. But, yeah, man, I mean, it sucked to lose Devontae Adams. I mean, that was a heartbreak, but, he went to Las Vegas, and they just got to kind of piecemeal it together. But there's still some really good wide receivers out there in free agency. I mean, I would love to see them signed, like maybe Will Fuller is that deep, that deep field stretch threat.
Yeah, I think that the top receiver on this team is not currently on the roster, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
In terms of who I think finishes with the most yards. What is your interpretation as a fan? I mean, Herrera thinks that Jordan Love is completely unredeemable. I mean, Are you out on him, or do you think there's a world where you give him an off season to kind of implement an offense for him? Is there use for him in the future?
He's at 3.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to kind of see what he can do long term. As Packer fans, we're all, every draft that rolls around, we're always like, oh, what would Jordan Love be the best quarterback in this year's draft? Where would he rank? When they drafted him, I mean, I pretty much fell out of my chair. I mean, I don't think anyone was expecting that pick at all. But I think
that was his worst season, but yeah, it was still a shocker.
It wasn't they just drafted him either. They traded up to get him too.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. I honestly think they felt like Rodgers was gone and they just had to trade up for him. I think they felt like they weren't going to be able to re-sign him, or he was going to demand a trade, and they felt they just had to trade up for him. It's unfortunate, but I think he's more athletic than people give him credit for. I would like to see him on the field a little bit more just to kind of see what he can do. But every year we're like, okay, is he gonna get traded? Is he gonna be the backup this year? He's been around for a couple of years now, and we haven't really seen a whole lot, so it still is kind of a mystery.
It feels like a scheme thing more than he can't play thing. Now, is he ever going to be a superstar? I don't know, but I don't think from what we've seen that you can solely blame him for the woes. Especially that Kansas City game. That was, ugh.
Yeah, I mean, and Rodgers, if you look back at his, rookie year, even his second year as a starter, he did not look good. And I'm not saying Jordan Love is the next incarnation of Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers, his first first year or two in the league, he did not look good at all.
Yeah.
So my biggest problem with him
first full season as a starter, Aaron Rodgers. Well, I guess never mind. He was 18 points per game, but when he played his first 2 seasons where he played 2 games or more, half fantasy point per game and 7.8 fantasy points per game.
Yeah.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, I mean, Rodgers had, he had like Greg Jennings and Donald Driver, and he had a great receiving core, and it's just been depleted year after year, and especially now with Adams being gone. But I'm excited to see him spread the ball around a lot. I think they're going to use Jones and Dillon a ton, and like you said, Justin, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Jones was right up there as the RB1 or 2 at the end of the year. Yeah. He's going to get probably 80, 90 targets easy.
Him and Saquon are my dark horses, but I lean Jones because I have data going back to 2002, and I believe Priest Holmes is the only running back to ever finish as an RB1 more than once. So Saquon has done that. Aaron Jones has not. So I lean Aaron Jones.
Nice. Oh, how we forget about Sammy Watkins too?
Sammy Watkins.
Yeah.
That's the Lizard King to you, Ryan?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's Lazard, the Lazard King.
Lazard
King and the Lizard King on the same team. Well, guys, that was another great episode of Dynasty Brews podcast. As always, I want to thank my guests, Adam, Ryan. Tell the fans where they can find you, on Twitter, and where they can find all your great work. Let's start off with you first, Ryan.
You can find me on Twitter at RyanMiner_FFB. You can find all my work at fffaceoff.com.
Awesome. And go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at AlwaysAuctions, and I work alongside Ryan at FFaceoff, so you can find us both there.
Beautiful, beautiful. And next week we will be doing the AFC North, so it's going to get a